for the Sonoma-Marin area rail transit, as well as the chair of the SMART board. I think she's still chair of the SMART board. Windsor Mayor Deborah Fudge. So I look forward to hearing from both of them. I think Mr. Dondero has a couple of opening remarks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You essentially did a good job of introducing them. And my apologies to Mr. Mansourian for misspelling his name at least once in my staff report. So we'll have to make amends on that later. Just a little bit more about this is a continuation of our speaker series of Innovators in Transportation. We actually have two different presentations today. This is the first one. Ms. Fudge is the only six-time mayor in Windsor's history, and she says she was really excited to be on the board during the startup of passenger rail service in Marin and Sonoma counties. She's working hard to extend the train north to Windsor, Healdsburg, and Cloverdale. And she has degrees in community development and environmental planning. Creating green belts, transit-oriented development, and now commuter rail service are her life's works, which she has been pleased to contribute to Sonoma County. Mr. Mansourian has worked for Marin County for 31 years, most recently as the head of Department of Public Works. He also managed the Marin County Transit Agency for 12 years and served as executive director of Marin County's Congestion Management Agency for 14 years. So he's got a deep background in transportation. In addition, Mr. Mansourian was a key figure in the 2008 effort to pass Measure A, a quarter-cent sales tax approved to fund SMART service. In 2011, the SMART board reached a unanimous agreement with interim executive director Farhad Mansourian to become the agency's new permanent general manager. A little bit of comparison of the SMART line to our lines and why there's a bit of interest coming from this county. Both lines parallel highways that are congested for many hours of the day in a context that offers few alternative routes. Both lines are single track. Both have existing freight service, and both serve multiple established communities that continue to grow. Both lines are building parallel bike pedestrian trails to serve a growing population of bike users, and both corridors host a heavy visitor traffic in addition to many commuters going to work and school. And finally, both corridors have a substantial number of seniors living nearby who want alternatives to driving a car. So back in May, the Santa Cruz Area Chamber led a group of community leaders up to ride the SMART train, and two of our board members were able to go, Commissioner Bertrand and Commissioner Kaufman-Gomez. But we felt like there was quite a rich story to be told here, and so we thought, well, if we couldn't get you up there, we would bring the story here. So that's why we invited our guest speakers today. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Mansourian. Or who's starting first? Deborah. Okay, Deborah will start.
Thank you. As you'll hear today, a rich story is probably an understatement about what it took to get a train running through Sonoma and Marin counties. I just wanted to give a brief, you did a great job, George, with my background. I've been a city council member for the town of Windsor for 22 years. And in fact, as the SMART district was being formed, Windsor started building from scratch a downtown, a TOD, with 3-story mixed-use buildings, and we built our own train station in 2007. The sales tax wasn't passed until 2008, so a lot of us in Sonoma-Marin had vision, and on our own, without any help from SMART at the time, started planning for transportation planning. Because I was, my appointment to SMART, I've been on the board for 13 years. I was appointed in 2005, went through 2 sales tax measures. The second one was successful. So I've been through that background and worked with Farhad for years. I was chair in 2010, and then I've been chair for the past 2 years. But I think what is of most interest to all of you is I'm a Santa Cruzan. So I moved here in 1970. I'm a 1974 graduate of Harbor High, the 3rd full graduating class. My stepfather was a founding professor of UC Santa Cruz and was provost of Cowell College from 1974 to 1979. And my mom taught at E.A. Hall Junior High here in Watsonville, and she started their first computer lab. She started out as a home ec teacher and then got a computer lab and was really concentrating on teaching the migrant farm worker kids computer skills. So they still live in Santa Cruz. I'm here every month helping them as they age and I age. And so I know this rail back and, from the back of my hand. I've been riding my bike along it for years, and I just can't tell you how excited I am to be able to share with Farhad our experience with SMART to be able to help my own hometown. Because my heart is here. I'm a fish out of water in Windsor and Sonoma County, but my heart is always with you, and I wear my sea glass here. So Farhad's going to give you a lot of information. It's we've had a long road, but it's exciting because we're here now, and there are still people, we've been in operation a year, who are just now riding SMART for the first time. We have lots of commuters, but we still have new people. And if there isn't a day that goes by where someone doesn't tell me and write an email or say something on Facebook, you've changed my life is better, my quality of life is better, because I have an alternative, and it's really connecting our communities. People are getting to know each other. And the economic development in San Rafael alone, nobody went to San Rafael before. They're going down just to visit and get off the train and go to this restaurant called Sol, S-O-L. And as I was driving into Watsonville today, I was picturing the renaissance of downtown Watsonville. It really can help connect your communities, connect your county, and there's a lot more positive aspects to it than just transporting you. So Farhad will take over from here, and I'll be here for questions at the end. Oh, and for those of you on the board and for staff, this is our commemorative coin. So when you start a big transportation project, especially a rail, we made commemorative coins that we've been passing out for the last year. These are very special. The public doesn't have these. So there's one for each of you here today. So we're giving this to you. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome back to Santa Cruz.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, distinguished commissioners, Farhad Mansourian, SMART's General Manager. Thank you for having us here to share with you our story. As soon as I get the clicker, so our plan is in the next 4 hours, take you through what we've gone over the last 50 years and exhaust you so you don't ask any tough questions at the end. Our plan, our chair and I, our plan is to walk you through a journey that we did since the 70s and how we got to where we are today. And then kind of pause, Mr. Chairman, you decide at that time, either we go forward because we had a meeting last night and a large member of our community was there. They were asking questions. So I added some more questions for yours because people said, so what is the relevancy of SMART to Santa Cruz? And so I've added some of that thoughts for you, and then you decide whether, we go with that. So where we are, just so everybody knows where SMART is, we are north of San Francisco. The first county we connect is Marin, and the second county we connect is Sonoma. And we have a history of having rail service. Actually, you see on the left, until 60 years ago, we had passenger rail service in Marin County, and it was a big, big part of history in Marin and Sonoma. Then in 1998, SMART Commission was formed, a group of people who wanted to get together and figure out what to do. Congestion was getting worse and worse, and both counties had representatives, and they started early planning studies. What do we do? What kind of vehicle we buy? Where the stations should be? And how do we start going forward? And then they did a tremendous work. They also did the EIR for their vision and started looking into financial planning. Well, where is this going to come from? And the biggest boost for them was in 2000, where they got traffic congestion relief program money, and they now had a big seat because state of California in particular really likes to reward communities who are getting together and are having a path forward. Nobody wants to give you money if there is a fight going on. Everybody waits till the fight settles down. And once they got into this level, the state really rewarded them, and that was a tremendous point of progress at that time. And then in 2004, our agency was formed from a commission to an actual transit agency by passage of Assembly Bill 224. So now SMART is a transit agency under the state of California. We're governed by 12 board members. They're all elected officials. They hire the general manager, who he and she serves at the pleasure of the board, and then the general manager runs the district on behalf of the board. In 2006, they put a quarter-cent sales tax, and they almost got there, 65.3%, so consistently over majority, but not the two-thirds. They spend the next 2 years figuring out what did we do wrong, what can we do better, and then in 2008, it passed by almost 70%. And just when everybody was planning, great, what do we do with this $900 million that they forecasted, then came the 2009, the greatest economic downfall, as you know, since the Great Depression. And boom, then everything had to come to a stop. I had nothing to do with SMART at that time, but studying the history, I have to give the board tremendous credit because they stopped and they said, we're going to live within our means and let's make a hard choice and phase the project. As elected officials, you all know how hard that is. You just finished an election promising people you're going to go 70 miles, and then, boom, your money is cut almost in half. What do you do then? So they survived that. And our citizenry understood. You know, when I read all the files, they appreciated being told exactly what it is. We no longer have that much money. So they phased the very first part of the project. So then in 2010, they went through a process and they selected this particular vehicle. The board was very, very adamant about this board needs to be extremely environmentally friendly, has to be quiet, and has to be green. And based on those specifications, Sumitomo of Japan won, and this is the car that we have, which you will see in a minute. It's Buy America compliant. It meets Tier 4 diesel engine. That is the cleanest requirement in the country right now for diesel engine, and we already meet that for what is coming up. Level boarding, you'll see an example. Of course, ADA compliant. One of the things we later on did as I arrived is, you know, the clicky sound, it's because you have a joint every 44, 45 feet. And in our case, we got rid of that, and we have a quarter mile, and every quarter mile, you have a joint where we also weld that. So it's a very quiet and very smooth ride. In a two-car Kansas, we have restroom that is ADA compliant and a little coffee place where has now become a party place because we also serve wine and beer. And it's one of the happiest commute you have in the evenings, trust me, because we ran out of those consistently. Then on weekends, it's also the workers as well as the tourists, and I'm told we run out of wine and beer by 11 a.m. So, what is the inside of a car looks like? ADA compliant. A two-car system carries 321 people sitting and standing. That's a two-car, and 24 bicycles. When you sit down, you think you're in a first class of an airline. You have your own power outlet, and your seat reclines, and it's really a pleasant ride for you. We have tables for those who are doing their work. So if you could hit that start button for me, please. I thought we'd take you inside so you can see what the inside looks like in a real world. This is a three-car. Very quickly after we opened up, we ran out of capacity. Lots of bicycles, lots of passengers, so we immediately had to carry third car, and that's for over 500 people and about 36 bicycles. So here is a look at what inside looks like. This is on my iPhone, so no Hollywood claim. To the left is the ADA compliant restroom. If you go the farthest distance, it's 1 hour, 7 minutes, and our board had the vision that maybe that's a little bit too long, so they created the restroom for us. Then you go through, and you're now in the next car, and in that next car we have the coffee place where you can buy you know, very simple snacks items. We have special designated area for ADA, and we have places where the bicycles can hang their bicycles that actually hold down to them. This is our snack area. So that was the empty car. We thought we'd show you what not empty car looks like. We started doing a toy drive that has become extremely successful, and the idea is, please, during the holidays you bring 1 or 2 toys and we leave them on the train, and if you need toys you take them. So some people bring them and some people take them, and whatever is left we go and give it to the other communities. You know, it has become a little bit a community itself. Those people who commute, which is about 60% of our traffic, is during the morning and evening commute. People get to know each other, and you walk in there and everybody knows who's going to get off at what exit, and there is a lot of events that those people are actually sharing with each other. Oops. So in 2012, we started our construction, and I'd like to share with you very quickly some of the milestones of the construction. On the top, you'll see the condition of what the railroad looks like, because passenger rail service stopped 60 years ago. In some of the areas we had freight, but in most of the area we had no freight, so the condition was really bad. And so here is a quick snap. We totally reconstructed 43 miles of track. We had to rebuild 63 at-grade crossings, and we quickly received tremendous amount of thank you notes from motorcyclists and bicyclists, because you can imagine the condition of those at-grade crossings crossing your city streets were horrible, and everything was rebuilt. You know, as my Caltrans friend can tell you, you go through a public works life and you're lucky, in your county public works, city public works, you replace 1 bridge in your career life. For Caltrans, maybe few. We had to replace 27 bridges that were old, and we had to totally rebuild them, because you now have this fast-moving modern rail and heavy freight that needed to accommodate our transportation. So we had to rebuild that. Then we had to rebuild the platform foundations, and we also installed 43 miles of a dock bank. What does that mean? That means we buried fiber optic for emergency communication, train control, and something else that I will report to you in a minute. And then, of course, we had to build over 100 signal systems. So very, very large public works project. And we're lucky, we also opened up among the very few in the country with positive train control. As you know, that is the mandate by United States Congress, that by end of 2018, every rail operation in United States have to have this technology. And the purpose of the technology is to prevent certain type of accidents, derailment, head-on collision, and those kind of things. Very, very, this is the latest of the technology, and we're very happy that we actually opened up with that in our service last year. Also, another milestones, we had to really create an entire organization. When I arrived at SMART, we had staff of 6 and zillion consultants. One of the things we did is we started now building a transit agency. We had to hire over 100 key people throughout the country, and that generated a lot of employment because for every something we were doing, it also got a lot of local businesses involved. One of the, in addition to all the bridges that I reported to you, we also ran into a problem where over Petaluma River Bridge, we had to replace this 100-year-old bridge where the bridge would take 15 minutes to turn so the ships can go and the train go over it. Well, you cannot run a commute trail and commuter train and have a 15-minute turn on a bridge. So we had to replace the bridge, and that was a big puzzling for the engineers of us tried to figure out what to do. We had to build a rail operations center, our dispatch center, where we control all the train movements, and that's where everybody reports to. We built that at Sonoma County Airport. One of our other missions is to build a multi-purpose path as much as possible that money allows, and we have right away, and we have built 15 miles of it so far, and we continue building more as we get more money and we get more opportunities.
Can you tell them where we got the bridge?
Yes, coming up. Okay, sorry. So some of the key operating details for you. Our top speed is 79 miles an hour. When you go end to end, average speed is about 40 with all the stoppage and slowing down and opening the doors and closing the door. So 40 miles an hour compared to Highway 101, which is about 1.5 miles an hour. Thanks to Senate Bill 1 that Kelly was talking about, SB 1, we received fund immediately, and we immediately put that to work and have increased our daily on weekend and weekday trips. So we immediately put that money into operations, and we're providing more trips than we even anticipated right at the beginning. We serve every 30 minutes during most of the congestion area, and as soon as we're able to hire more people, then we will fill in and truly have a 30-minute commute in all the evening and morning commute hours. We have two-way operation on a single track. We chose to do single track. Our environment and the preservation of our environment is very crucial, as it is on the top of our list. We did not want to build two tracks where environmentally was sensitive, so we operate on a single track, and we have built 4 passing lanes where the trains pass each other at the speed, of course very carefully and very precisely, and that's one of the deals with the positive train control. And since last year, we have carried 650,000 people. All the people who said nobody's going to write you, all the people who said this is absolutely just an expensive toy, now are, well, I wish I could say they're quiet, but they're not. They continue saying, yeah, but, and we'll get into that. So we're very happy, 650,000 people who are no longer on highways and local roads and have got their life back. Environmental mitigation. When you do major public works project, as you know, for everything you do, you have to do environmental mitigations. One of the things we wanted to do, and our board was adamant, is instead of doing all the little mitigations here and in this county and in that city, can we do something major? And the answer was yes. So we purchased 56 acres of an area right between Marin and County and Sonoma counties, and the site has been restored, and you will see this is what the site looked like. It used to be an old marina where people would go and do trap shooting and get on their boats and go to San Francisco Bay. This is what it looked like for decades. It was just run down, And we bought that, and we turned that into an absolute award-winning marina, where now you see species and animals that nobody has seen for decades, and it's a beautiful area. So that was one of our big contributions, almost 60 acres of mitigation. Then on our pathway, one of the things we did is we took a step back and we said, you know, we want to build 70 miles of pathway. How do we do that? And one of the things I had our staff do is let's go get NEPA clearance. As you know, you have CEQA for the state, but for the federal money, you need NEPA. And thanks to Caltrans partnership, we did a NEPA for 36 miles, and we are now very much eligible and have been receiving federal funds. So it's kind of that kind of planning that you come out with a vision, and then you take a step back and you figure out where you put yourself in that best position to do that. Just in last fiscal year, I reported to our board that we just built another 5.6 more miles of bike path at a very good cost of $5.4 million. We have 7 transit agencies in Marin and Sonoma, and it took us about 2 years to figure out together how do we coordinate your schedule and ours. When our train arrives, what happens? We wanted to make sure from the rider's point of view that you have almost a seamless. We're all different government agencies, but as a citizen, you don't care. You want to get off bus and get on a train, and vice versa. So we work very hard. Our transit planners, I'm very proud of them, and they put a tremendous relationship together. So finally, what we were able to do is have all of this dialed in. We're still learning. One of the interesting problems we're having is because train is on its own track, other than something has happened, we are on time, but the buses are on the local traffic or on the regional highway traffic, and we're still trying to figure out how to dial in those final, I'm 1 minute early, you're 1 minute late, and how do we get that going. We now have a lot of taxis and ride sharing and local jurisdictions like County of Marin. They really embrace this idea. The county provides, if I'm not mistaken, either $40 or $50 per employee if they're using the green commute. And so they incentivize the employees, and then they turn around and they basically buy what I call wholesale deal of tickets from us, and their employees are then getting the train ride at very, very small price. So all of that is taking place. Then in addition to the bike path we're building, we also build lockers for the bicycles, and now we're beginning to have bike rentals. Actually, Metropolitan Transportation Commission, your counterpart in the Bay Area, just gave Marin and Sonoma counties $830,000 for 1 year so they can start this bike share program at all of our stations. And of course, we're allowing the bikes on the train. Then the latest thing that has happened is now the private cars have showed up. The CMAs, congestion management agencies, your counterparts, they are doing the car share, they're doing the zip card, they're having the lift discounts. Like Marin CMA, what they do is if you get off the train, they give you a huge discount, and apparently you only pay $5 wherever you go. So TAM pays the discount. So Lyft shows up, you get on it, you go to your place of work, you pay $5, and TAM pays the rest. So it's that kind of thinking that everybody is now embracing our arrival. One of the things we heard from the employees is, what if I have an emergency while I'm taking train? I need to go home because of emergency. And they've come out with the guaranteed ride homes. So these are the things that is falling in place very, very nicely. Our payment method is two-way. One is on a Clipper card, which, as you know, everybody now in the Bay Area, all the transit agencies use. And also we developed our own app. And the app is extremely popular. As you can imagine, everybody has an iPhone these days. You get on and you buy your ticket and you show that to the conductors. Our fares is based on a zone. The farther you travel, the more you pay. It has a base plus the number of zones you go through. Then we created more products, and our number one product that it's very, very most popular is the 31-day pass. The 31-day pass for $200, you go 31 days, no limit, as many times as you like, and that's the most popular for our commuters. The same pass is half price for seniors, youth, and people with disabilities. For businesses, we created what is known as EcoPass. So IRS allows, if you are spending money on public transit, and until recently, bicycle was considered public transit, but the current administration changed the definition, so now it's just transit. If you are spending money, there is two things you can do. One is you can buy those tickets before tax, and the second is if you buy those through your employees, then that private employer, their payroll tax is reduced because they're spending money on that. So it has a great business, and for your point of view, it has that. And that's what we have, and it's called the EcoPass. Many of our public and private businesses are buying those EcoPasses, which our people use. Some of the smart benefits that we planned and we're looking at is, of course, it's fast, it's reliable, and it's dependable. You know, Highway 101 is the spine that connects us, connects Marin and Sonoma. It is my marketing plan. It is a parking lot. I really appreciate that. On weekends, it is as bad as weekdays because of the tourism that is coming from San Francisco Marin going north. So this gives them an option and a reliable and a dependable. So these are some of the benefits. We open our doors to full passenger service on August 25th, very festive area. And then I want to stop and just give you, so all of this is great, but when you build such a large public works project, then you run into challenges, and I call opportunities. So I'd like to share some of that with you. So this is where we started with what our stations should look like. Pretty nice. Kind of, it fits exactly what Marin and Sonoma and Santa Cruz, right? You know, it's like, and so we go through all of our process, environmental, how much money is available, and the community input. And then we actually end up building this, which is simple but practical, level boarding, 48-inch above, and fully ADA compliant. The location of the stations was one of the challenges. Fortunately, it happened before my time. So by the time I showed up, Deb and the rest of the board members had to go through this. So now all I could do is say, yeah, this is good or not. But I always said it's good. We ran into interesting items that I want to run by you. So imagine we run trains 60 years ago. So our right-of-way was there. But as things were going very smoothly, we discovered a tree, and if you look at this tree and you look at very much on top, you see that it has white leaves. And so the construction guy was ready to cut it down. Remember, this is in our right-of-way, so that means the tree is only 50, 60 years old, because prior to that there was passenger service. And I had an activist who come to me and says, Farhad, what if this tree can cure cancer? And I'm like, okay, well, let's study that. So we studied the tree. I got experts from UC Berkeley to come in and look at it. They looked at it. They said, nah, this is just, maybe it's a disease. Cut it. And I said, okay, can I have that in writing that this is just a nothing tree? And they did. Well, the community started talking more, and the experts started being divided. And the idea was this is a rare CHIMERIC albino tree that there is only 10 of them in the world. And you can imagine, you see how big it is compared to the guy standing next to it. So what do you want to be? As a transit agency, you want to be the one who cut the cancer curing tree, but you have it in the letterhead that says it's good, right? Or do you actually do something about it? And I went to my board and I said, what do I do? And the chair and everybody said, you make all that money, you go make the decision. Then we see if you made the right decision or not. So I made the decision. It became a major operation of moving the tree and the roots. You can imagine this is now about 10-story tall. And we have all these utility lines overhead, the services. So it became an entire operation. We're very proud of that because we moved this tree. We took 1,000 DNA samples from it in case this is a cancer curing tree, and it dies during transportation, and those are safe in different laboratories where they keep these kind of things. I'm happy to report to you the tree is doing fantastic in its new place. It has a plaque next to it, and everybody looks at it, and the number one question I'm asked is, so how much did this cost? Which I always say. And the next slide, right? Because I learned whatever, if I tell the true number, then it's 50% love it and 50% say another government waste. So, next item, how's that? We had to replace the bridge over Petaluma River. Replacing a bridge where ships go under it and train goes over it is something between $35 and $50 million. And our budget did not have a $35 to $50 million budget. It's that simple. So I dispatched our team of engineers and I said, you get out of the typical thinking that we do as engineers, what is the safest way, and let's figure out what we can come up with the safest, but something very unique. Well, we found that United States Coast Guard had just installed a bridge in Galveston, Texas. The channel was no longer wide enough, and they wanted to get rid of the bridge. So we bought a used bridge. I took that item to my board, and there was almost no comments, but everybody was staring at me like, really? And I said, well, here is the math. We can save 20 million plus. And the board, to their credit, said, okay. So that's what we did. We bought this bridge, we transported it, and we x-rayed every pieces of it. We built a new foundation, and the bridge won the California Bridge Project of the Year 2 years ago. We now have an 80-year bridge, which, by the way, it turns at 110 seconds, where ships go under it and the bridge comes up. So, challenges and opportunities. One of the big things that we do during construction, and we do constantly, is connecting with our community. Young, experienced, Latino communities, other communities, we want them to know what is happening with their train, what is coming up, and a lot of safety education. Some of the slides for you. We created this website where it teaches people about public safety. If you haven't had train operation in your town for a long time, there are generations who've never seen the train. Our generation was grown with train, but the younger generation don't know that. And they continue driving or walking and riding their bike the way they are. So that was a big, big challenge for us. We go to every single elementary and junior high and high school, and we have sessions one-on-one. We show them films how to be what we call track smart. Total cost of the project, including the phase we are doing today, which is connecting us to Larkspur, is about $533 million. As you can see on this pie chart, about 78% was our money, and the rest we were able to get from state, federal.
Is the capital cost?
This is everything, correct. Capital cost and everything up to opening day. Freight service update. We have another government agency known as North Coast Rail Authority. They have easement on our tracks to run freight, and they have hired a freight operator, very much like what you have done. And right now, there is a Senate bill that has passed the Senate and is in the Assembly called Senate Bill 1029. And Senator McGuire is proposing to get rid of the North Coast Railroad Authority and transfer all of their freight duties to SMART, and also preserve 150 miles way beyond our limit for a trail that they want to build. His vision is to have a trail system from Golden Gate Bridge for 300 miles north. And as I said, it has passed through the Senate and it's going through the committees, not a single opposition so far on the Assembly side. What is it that we're going to do next is, as I mentioned, we are building our next connection to Larkspur that gives us a ferry connection to San Francisco. Our business community are very, very excited about the ability of people who are coming from San Francisco and don't want to drive on 101 parking lot is to take the ferry and then to take the train. The business community sees tremendous amount of growth. That should open by end of next year. The next one is going north is Windsor, happens to be Deb's town. That project is $55 million. We finished CEQA. The design is 20% done. And we just received, within the last 2 months, a $21 million from State of California SB1 money and $40 million from the Regional Measure 3. So this is now fully funded, and we are beginning the preliminary design and hope to finish that as well. Then we have 2 more to go, Healdsburg and Cloverdale. And those, we finished environmental, we finished the 20% engineering. And then one of the interesting things is, if you are familiar with Marin and Sonoma, Highway 37, a state highway, connects Marin and Sonoma going east-west to Highway 80. And it is another parking lot. State of California and the rail plan, they approached us and they said, we want you to look into putting rail. We already have freight going there as a passenger service. And I met with the Secretary of Transportation. He and his deputy, their vision is connecting communities throughout the state on a state rail plan with rail. And they asked if we could do this, and I said, of course. Can I see some money to do that? And they just gave us money, and we're going to start that planning. So they're very, very serious about doing this, and they put their money where their mouth is. They're not just requiring you, they have you do it. Lessons learned later on. I'm speaking on behalf of Deb and I'll be happy to come back, spend many hours with you on a long workshop, and share with you some of the lessons we learned on the governance model, funding options, planning and environmental, the lessons learned that we would have done different during our EIR, during our planning process, share with you engineering and capital programs, why we were successful, when do you go out for bid, when do you manage this, when do you manage that, the construction phase, how do you handle that, and then finally operation and testing. So we've learned a lot in that last 6-7 years, and we want to share all of that with you. I'll recommend that a number of workshops, but if you'd like to come up there and look at what we've built and spend the day and talk about this and meet other board members, I think it'd be terrific for you to get that feel of what we went through. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what it is. I just have a couple of more slides to kind of get you to think, because this is what I've added. So what? Okay, this is great. Thank you, Smart. You did a great job. What's in it for us? And that's what I start putting in, is our case applicable to you? So what I'm putting down is, for us, Highway 101 is a parking lot. We couldn't move. Our emergency people couldn't move. It is simply a very, very bad situation for us. Those who were using buses and van pool, they were stuck on the same highway than everybody else was. That was our situation. The housing cost forced people to leave further away, and employers were having very hard time getting employees, and typical commute hour was 60 to 90 minutes. So this was our life. Does this sound any familiar with you?
Yeah.
You know, you replace 101 with 17 and 1, you're having the same issues. For many years, our opposition would want us to do nothing. For many years, our opposition would say the train to nowhere, it will never get built. They would say it will promote high density, it will change the character of the community. By the way, there has not been a single high density built in the last 7 years that we've been doing the train. Because strong land use by the local jurisdictions, just like yours, that's what controls, not us. It will change the character of the community I'm sharing with you, and of course, SMART's going to cut thousands of trees, and it will not solve Highway 101 problem. They immediately wanted to know, if I spend $100 million, how many lanes off 101, in your case 17, are you going to free up? They were using for those simple maths. It will cost more. Fares are too high. We haven't even established it yet, but they predicted that fares be too high. The proposed tax, which was the quarter-cent sales tax, that discriminates. No one will ride it anyway, so what is it you're just building? Your forecast is too high, and we did 18 ridership studies, just so you know. So if you really want to do a ridership study, I urge you, ask George to call me first before you do 18 of them, because none of them agree with each other. Your opponents disagree with all of them. Your supporters will say they're low, and your opponents will say they're high. And then the real world is when you open your doors. Staff doesn't know what they're doing. The staff is getting paid too much. Everything I'm just mentioning. And then my favorite is the fuzzy math. And to be honest with you, I've been reading some of your stuff, and the fuzzy math is right there. You know, 2 plus 2 is 17, but alternative doing nothing is great. Just letting you know. So we went through all of these, and again, if any of these you're already hearing, I just want you to know it's there. I want to share with you, we are looking at SMART as an option, not a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet. In my 39 years of practicing as a civil engineer, we civil engineers can take you to the moon, but we cannot get you out of your congestion with a silver bullet. You need options. This is what our people learned. We need options. For us, train and the bicycle path are 2 options. That's all we're giving you. In addition to your car, your bus, your ferry, whatever other mode, we're giving you options. The train is fast and reliable. The bicycle is reliable because we're on our own path. We're not part of the highway. That's what we're giving you. It's an alternative to reduce your congestion, health and environmental benefits, and jobs and economic growth. I cannot emphasize to you how happy our downtowns are and how happy those local jurisdictions are. Without mentioning names, we had a mayor of a town. Deb and I and other board members had to assure the mayor the world is not going to come to an end when we show up, because there were all these fears. And the mayor is so happy because the businesses are so happy. Their businesses has grown by 30%. Going back to that number, 600,000 people, just think about this. This is our first year. We're still learning. Where were these 600,000 people before? They're not new people. They were on local roads, highways. Whatever they were doing, they're now coming in on the train. So, does any of these apply to you? This is what I put together. So, we have a report card because on August 18, we have a celebration. Our board just declared our first year birthday is August 18 and 19, free service for everybody. So it'll be a great time to visit us on Highway 18. On August 18, we have a big celebration, and our report card is as follows. More than 650,000 people, passengers that we have carried, more than 58,000 bicycles. So we now have a core group of our commuters, about 10%, who are using the bike as their first and last mile. So it's not instead of or fighting, it is us together figuring out how to build more facilities for them on the train as well as off the train. And, and we've carried over 2,800 people using wheelchair. Those people are now telling us that they have a new way of going up and down and have independence. They now can get on a train, get off, go to a restaurant, and come back. We're getting a lot of good comments there. The farebox recovery beyond our budget, our chief financial officer, she's very, very happy. I provide that report to our board every month. So on the money side, we're doing very good. And here is what I want to leave you with. Since 2011 that I arrived, because our board put local money and because we started building, we have brought in $157 million. And we just got another $40 million from state and federal and regional. People will watch you, and if you're fighting among each other, I'm talking about us, nobody's was interested to help us. As soon as we started building and we started going forward, the state, regional, and the feds want to help you, especially they want to help you finish it. And that's what it has come. So once we started demonstrating, and 157 million goes into that pie chart that you saw, and it will only get more and more. So that's really all the items I wanted to share with you. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and of course the president of our board, but we wanted to give you a quick rundown of what is our world. So thank you for your time. We'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the presentation. I'm sure there's going to be questions, and we'll also be taking comments from the public. But I just, your experience in Sonoma-Marin is very important for us to hear. Just work my way down here, Ms. Brown.
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask a question about the relationship between the rail line functioning and the trail portion of your project. As you noted that about 15 miles of the trail has been developed, and significantly more than that, miles of rail line in operation. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the logistics of the relationship between the two, the rail and the trail. I mean, there, as you know, and I believe it was true in your communities, that there are many people who really want to see a trail, a bike and ped trail now, and to the extent that we can make those, work in synergy with each other, that's our goal. So if you could talk a little bit about that, it would be, I think, helpful for all of us.
Great question. Remember I said if you decide to go forward, I like to, bring my team back and have them work with your team even during the planning process. You have beautiful sketches during the planning process that says I'm going to put the rail here, I'm going to put the bike here, I'm going to put the tree there, and then somebody there. Well, if you don't, once you get into construction and actually building those, you start looking into the environment, the regulations, you will very quickly see, okay, maybe I should not said that, maybe I'll come up with a different plan. So lessons learned is figure that piece out. In our case, where the rail and the trail go, it is on such a sensitive environmental area that it's simply a red line for our community and certainly my board. And so we, as a railroad, you're existing, and you can reconstruct with no regulation and permits or very little. As a bike, you're not existing. You have to go through all these reviews. As I speak today, we have 2 lawsuits against us on the bike side. Property owners who say, you can't build a bike path here. We don't want it. For all the wrong reasons, but we don't want it. So that's number one. The second, that you need to be very careful, and this is what happened to us. The property that you now have purchased has probably 3 types of ownership. The smallest piece is what you write down own. The other 2 pieces is you either have easement or you are operating because since 1800s, a farmer gave it to the next person, to the next person. And if you start drilling into those descriptions, it will say for rail. So we're being challenged when we're putting bicycle and trails by those people saying, this is not rail. So we're going through those. That's why they're getting slower. And the cost is also very high. So we're still committed. We want to do the right thing. It's absolutely a big part of our mission. We just need to be, much more thorough during the beginning part of it. I hope this answered your question.
Mr. Rockin.
I thank you, first of all, for your presentation. It was very, very helpful. My first question is, what's the population base that is being served? I mean, I'm not counting San Francisco, or might use it, but the commuter potential population that's within the 2-county area that the track runs through.
Marin is about 250,000, Sonoma about 500,000, so population base about 750.
And you gave us an overall cost for the construction. Do you have in your head or an ability to say what the cost per mile was for the construction of the
No, I mean,
cost?
if you take that and divide it by 43, then you come out with a cost. But I want to give you one caution. By doing that, please don't apply that to yours, because people tend to do that. Here is why. Your environment might be harder or much easier.
Right.
You might not have 40-some bridges. You might have more bridges, you might have less bridges. So be careful of that. That's why during planning process, having engineers who have built, not engineers who can just give you on paper, who have built rail, because that's when you have a lot of opportunities in doing cheaper construction. The third item is the timing. You must spend, this is, if I was, your guy, I would be saying during good economic time, you want to do your environmental, your design, and get ready. And as soon as the economy turns, you start building. 2 big reasons. You get much better prices, and you put everybody back to work. And this is what we did. We put thousands of people back to work when there were no major projects going. So that timing becomes very critical. And of course, you get the biggest bang for your buck.
So you've only been operating for a relatively small period of time now. Do you know what your operating cost is actually per hour for running this service?
Not per hour. Our entire operation is $17 million. Our entire agency budget is about $30 million. But the $30 million, most of it goes to paying off the bond for the construction that we did. But $17 million is our operation cost.
And in terms of the service, I'm trying to understand, you had a lot. You started with local money, which has made the state and the federal government interested in supporting you. What were the sources for your funding for the local?
Quarter cent sales tax.
That was it? That was
correct. So basically what we told the community, we said, look at your congestion, look at this is an option. The message that we were giving is every time you spend $100, you're giving me 25 cents.
Okay.
That's the quarter cent sales tax.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. So you mentioned, I would imagine during the campaign, a big part of it was congestion relief. And you've alluded to the fact that there's been significant congestion relief on Highway 101 as these trains. How many cars before and after in terms of morning and afternoon commutes? What is the delta? What is the difference now that your train is running in terms of number of cars going down 101 and in the afternoon coming back?
So I'm not escaping your question, but I want to give you a different thinking because...
Oh, I need it, believe me.
No, the reason is Highway 101 carries over 100,000 people. If you would look at, this is a day, if you would look at our 3,000 people ridership a day, and you would simply say 3,000 compared to 100,000, right? You don't even put a dent, even if you reduced 100,000. I'm doing a math exercise, but this is important for you to let me do. Sure. And you go to 97,000, and then you reach a conclusion that, well, that ain't gonna do any good. And then you add $500 million expense to that, and you say, this is absolutely no-go. So I want to give you a different way of looking at it. You spend $500 million, and it's a one-time money. You now have a system for 30 years plus. We carried 600,000 in the first year.
Is that 300,000 each way?
Yes, let's assume that. Okay. Right? So where did these 600,000 people do before? This is what I say in my debates. What were they doing before? These are not new workers. These are the same school children and the same people who going up and down. They used to be on your local roads and your local highway. Now they're on a train. When I talk to the mayor of San Rafael and say, has your downtown changed? Is it like you see tens of thousands of people a day? No. Except all those people who used to go on a single automobile, they now are on their bike or on you. So you start looking at it that way, the math makes a lot of sense, and the option gives you a lot of sense. So don't forget, we look at the bike path and the train as two options, not two silver bullets.
No, I understand that.
We will never carry enough people that will change a difference to 100,000 per day on Highway 101. We just won't.
But even in your report, you talk about congestion relief. It's not real.
How is it not real? Where were these 600,000 before?
Okay. Where are the 600,000 before? I'm talking about the efficacy in relationship to the dollars that are invested in something like this. So you're talking about $600 million, plus you have an operating expense of, what, 17 million. Then when you start talking about fare box recovery, what is the percentage of fare box recovery? In other words, how much has to be subsidized by taxes or the taxpayer? I mean, you said it exceeded expectations, but it's what, fare revenue divided by the operating expenses, right?
So I give you all the answers. These are very good questions, but I want to, if I can show you, if that's where you want to go, you can build anything. Your highway doesn't make sense. Your highway system is subsidized every single day. Your local road is subsidized every single day. Public transit is subsidized every single day. Our money comes from the quarter cent that our taxpayers are giving us. That's what they're giving us, about 30 million a year. We use that, we bond it, we used it for capital, and now we're using it for operation. That's what the citizens decided to do, 25 cents every time they spend 100. There is no other subsidy. That's what it is. Every time you go to a gas pump, you're paying about 40 cents of tax. And that's how you're subsidizing for local roads and highways. So that math, if you, as I said, if you want to look at it, then take the 600,000 multiple by 30 years and compare that cost to the one-time cost of building a system that gives you options. And then we also looked at, is there an option of doing nothing? Is that what the citizens want? And they said, no, we want you to do something. Well, widening the freeway in the environment we didn't want to do that because they're very critical, environmental sensitive area. If you had all the money in the world, would you add 4 more lanes to Highway 1 and 17? Is that feasible? I don't know. But those are what we went through. So our constituents are very happy. We got 70% of the vote. And all I can report to you is they're asking for more, not less.
One last question, and forgive me, you did bring in the kind of political option with respect to what we're doing here in Santa Cruz County, so I have to ask a few tough questions. So in our packet today, Progressive Railroading, it talks about the agencies tackle first and last mile challenges. And embedded in there, it says ridership, and I don't know exactly, this is in LA. Rail ridership has grown as the agency has opened new lines. It's primarily bus service that has declined. Help me understand a little bit. Is there a ratio between the number of trips per day on the rail versus, has there been a decline in the number of metro and bus ridership?
Not that I know. The way we look at it, there are 3 types of services. Golden Gate Bridge provides regional service, people who are going from Sonoma County to San Francisco. We don't go to San Francisco. That hasn't changed. Then we have local city buses, which they're circulating around the city. We don't provide that service. We don't have people who get on here and go one station. I mean, we do, but as a whole, we don't. Where we are affecting is people who are stuck on 101 from 6 a.m. to 8:30 and from 2:30 till 5. That's the service we're providing, plus the tourism and especially the weekends.
Is it fair to say that the cities that are the destination points, help me understand a little bit, I kind of understand San Francisco, but is there also an East Bay component of, from Oakland to Richmond to and other cities along the 80 corridor that this service applies to?
This service provides a parallel service to the Highway 101 spine, gets you there fast if your schedule works. Not everybody takes the train because it doesn't go everywhere and the schedule doesn't work for you. So that's that. For those that it does, it provides a faster and more reliable service. We have a small number of our workforce that goes to San Francisco or East Bay. I don't know about your demographic here. In Marin and Sonoma, almost 75% of our traffic is generated inside the county. They're going from one workplace to the next workplace, back to the next workplace. So we're not like BART that is crossing many different counties. We are providing those internal circulations an option to get there faster. It's the Sonoma folks working in Marin. It's the Marin folks working in Sonoma. That is what it's really serving the most.
One last point. I don't want to dominate here, but one last point. Would it affect your reasoning in any way that if you knew that most of the people who travel on Highway 1 during the morning, 61% of them don't go into Santa Cruz, Capitola, Soquel, they go over the hill to San Jose or Scotts Valley or Highway 17. Do you see where, on the one hand, you have from point A to point B, it's pretty straight, but here you have people that in no way would ever use a train because they're being diverted to San Jose. How would that affect your reasoning in terms of the efficiency of a train in Santa Cruz
I'm
County?
seeing my Santa Cruz expert coming up to take that question out.
We have something in common. I've been on the city council for 22 years, and
have you?
and I've been mayor 6 times. So.
Okay, there you go. I have a counterpart.
Yeah.
So knowing your county like I do and looking at what happens in Marin and Sonoma counties is we have a few people, not everybody will do this, but people will transfer modes of transit. So we have people in Marin and Sonoma County who go to the Larkspur Ferry and then, right now we don't go to the Larkspur Ferry, so they travel to downtown San Rafael, they get on a bus that we provide that gets to the ferry, and then they get on the ferry. So what I can envision for you is the people in Watsonville trying to move north, trying to go north, and those that may go over the hill to San Jose to work at Apple or Google or anywhere else, I could see them taking the train to the most northern stop and then catching the bus that would go over the mountain. So there are people that will try to get out of their cars and try to make easier transportation choices that are, and it also is, they can work while they're on the trains. They're more relaxed when they get there. It's sort of a quality of life as well as congestion. But some people will get on a train from the southern county, go to the most northern stop, and the buses could meet them and just take them straight over the hill. So I could see some people doing that.
Maybe a point of information, Mr. Dondero, did you have information that was asserted that 61% of the people go over the hill?
Yeah, I take issue with that number.
Okay.
Luis just looked up in our RTP, our Regional Transportation Plan, and 77% of people who commute stay within our county. Now, that's not all on Highway 1, but I know the number I remember working on the Highway 1 EIR is that about 30% of the people on Highway 1 divert up 17. Now, 17 is a busy road for sure, but a lot of those people come from West Side Santa Cruz, Scotts Valley, and so forth. So it's not all just coming off of Highway 1.
It may be similar in terms of...
I think there's a lot of similarity to the numbers that you provided.
I just thought of something that we haven't discussed yet, is that the train is also an option during emergencies. Our train was used during the fires. The first pictures that we saw October 10th from the 6,000 houses that burned down in Sonoma County came from the train. The engineers were taking pictures outside the windows of the train, and that's the first time we saw the extent of the devastation, was the 419 train going south. We had people get on the train with their suitcases to evacuate. So they did that on their own without us planning. So now we're working with communities and all the fire agencies to really make a plan so that when an earthquake happens, we're having a lot of 3.5 earthquakes up in Windsor right now, so we're expecting a bigger one, that we've got a plan in place so there can be organized evacuations on the rail, should the rail still be in good shape. And so, because 101, a bridge could go down and then we would be stuck. 101 is our only corridor to San Francisco. We're not like, San Jose or Los Altos or the Peninsula where we have Highway 280, Highway 101, we only have one option. So this is also good in the face of emergencies, and I think that would be good here, having lived through the 1989 earthquake here as well.
Thank you. Mr. Bertrand.
Yeah, to Executive Director, to the Mayor of Windsor. I remember the Water World in Windsor when that was just a little dinky highway, and I never had a chance to stop there because Dad was on a hell-bent trip to get up to somewhere like Butt Reservoir or whatever to go camping. But certainly changed your town. So this is actually to the Director. I'm sorry to bring you back. So I was trying to ask myself how much money you're spending on lawsuits for various issues that have come up, whether they're like right-of-way issues or people that are worried about the tree that might cure cancer or somewhere in between. But my real issue is how do you gauge with the public? I assume that over the course of your story involved in this project, obviously there was a campaign issue. We went through a campaign issue. So there's some similarities. I'm wondering what you learned in terms of reaching out to the public, trying to help them understand the issues involved. One particular point, if you could cover, is transparency. Another point I wish you could cover is reaching out to the individual concerns. Some are organized of the community so that you could hear where they're coming from and try to, if not allay those fears, incorporate their suggestions, which in many cases are pretty good. So if you could give us some of your wisdom that you've learned, I'd really appreciate it.
During the campaign, which I was not part of, there were all these fears and there were all these questions that you could never answer. And even if you would answer, they would simply say, well, we disagree. And then, go do another ridership study and another. During construction, a lot of attempt was made to stop us, because now when they said you will never get going, now you are going. Then we got to the testing, and you now have a new phenomena that you haven't had in 50, 60 years, right? And then we opened our doors, and came those who were very supportive, great, those who were not, and all we said, our campaign was come and try it. Train is not for everyone. Trail and bike is not for everyone. If it fits your schedule, and if you're healthy enough to ride the bike, or you like to be healthy enough, use it. Where we are today, the leaders of the opposition haven't changed. As a matter of fact, I was reading some of the anti-stuff for you. They're quoting those guys in Marin and Sonoma as part of the reasoning. So it seems like they're using the same set of argument. None of the numbers matter. Nothing has changed. Other than that, the story I want to tell you is most of our opponents were centered in a town where I live. And everybody was from that town. And as soon as I got on SMART, the board warned me, it's like, watch out for your town, because everybody in that town is trying to stop you. That town, the city council just voted to spend $8 million of their money to build the third station. In other words, just in 1 year, that town that was trying to stop now says, I want more, because their chambers, their students, their seniors, everybody asked for, and my board just approved, we build the third station. Constantly learning. I travel a lot on the train, day and night, different times, as I have my managers do, and I know many board members do. And we ask people, what's going on? What are your thoughts? What are we doing right and what are we doing wrong? And the number one comment is, you need to have more train, you need to have later train, I like to go to dinner and come back late, and those then become financial issues as well as hiring issues. So you never stop communicating, it's only the beginning. And their input is absolutely crucial for our success. I hope I answered your question.
You sort of did. I think that there's always a natural tension between the public and its concerns and whatever elected body that there is that's representing them, whether on a city or a county basis. I think it's a natural thing. I think it's healthy to have that tension. I don't think it's something that should be denigrated. I think it's something that should be worked with. I'm a major proponent of transparency. I think whenever agency, including this agency, George, is doing something, call a spade, as you said. Right now, as most of you are aware of, I'm very concerned about our investment study that's coming up, which just got put off for a bit of time. And so I really caution the public to not take that for granted. I think that public involvement in that study, the analysis of the study once we get it, is very important. Did you have anything comparable to that in your experience?
So when the board first, the SMART board went through a period where they had 2 different general managers in about 4 months. And SMART board reached out to my county board of supervisors, that's where I was public works director, and asked to borrow me. And my board said, go help out. This board, when Deb was on it, asked me to do two things, talk about transparency. One, the opponents are saying there is a $30 million shortfall. Is this true? And second, is this project doable, or are we truly wasting our money? And I spent about 4 months interviewing, reading files, and talking to everybody who knew, including the opposition. And I came back to the board. By the way, the board said, we want you to report that in a public setting, not in a confidential, just go out and say it. I informed the chair and the vice chair on a Friday night that I finished my study, and the chair said, go for it. And I said, what do you mean? I'm a county guy dealing with supervisors. They're complicated, live county council. And I'm like, just go for it. They said, go for it. So I called a press conference, and I said on the first question of opponents saying this is $30 million shortfall, is this true? And I said the answer is no. They're $70 million short. Number two, can this project be built? And I said, yes, you need to have people who have built projects, who know how to do project, because you go through different phases. Construction and design and implementation are very different. You have made a lot of assumptions that has made your cost very high because you don't have details, or you don't have people who have built projects. You have consultants who've never built projects, and they go look at somebody else's numbers. And I said, you can build this project, and you can even go further, which is exactly what we did. So that's how we started with our transparency. On our website, all the financial information is there. I require, one of the things that we did, I require our CFO to have a financial report at every month and a quarterly project report, and everything is posted on the same day on our website. So we're doing everything. Right now, to be honest with you, other than the die-hard opponents who haven't changed anything, no argument has changed, the people who are coming to our board are simply people who want more. They're not questioning whether this was a good idea or not. They're simply saying, I want more. I want more choices and I want more options, which we say we're working on it.
Or now I'll head this the way, Mr. Botdorf.
I want to thank you both for taking the time to come and make the presentation. Your insight, your vision, your candor is invaluable to us. I really have no questions. I just appreciate you taking the time to come here and let us know of an option that we possibly could have. Thank you.
Again, I concur too with the presentation, and I'm sure that the public will have a lot more interest in it. I'll try and keep my questions brief. One is, I didn't hear too much talk about the freight and the relationship with freight on the corridor with the passengers. Coming from Watsonville, we're using that as a freight corridor right now. We may not have so much volume, but has it changed? Has it increased? Timing? What is your relationship between passenger and freight?
Great question. So we are the controller of the railroad. We dispatch both passenger and freight. And right now, because we operate in a positive train control mode, and they're not, they have to comply by end of the year, we only authorize them to operate when we're not, and that's between midnight and 4 a.m. And we have worked that out with the freight, and they have in turn worked that out with the businesses that they serve. Going forward, if the Senate bill passes and we do become both passenger and freight, my vision, subject to my board's approval, is to really be able to expand the freight. A lot of the freight traffic is on your highways, isn't it? That's how they're moving goods, and that's where there is a lot of green gas issue. We did one connection for one of the major beers in Sonoma, and they said that they have replaced 100 truck traffic a week because of the connection that the freight now has. The connections are expensive. They're $300,000 to $500,000. So if we can figure out, and I'm talking to the rail division of Caltrans and State Transportation Agency, they're very much seeing that, and they want those trucks off their highway as well. So there is a big opportunity, but we can't do that till the state legislation goes through and my board becomes the board for both functions. But other than that, we regulate them and we allow them to operate when we think it's safe.
And my other question that isn't at all related, and since you're looking at your 1-year anniversary, it may take a little bit of time and reflection. Comment-wise, you're saying that the communities are engaged with this, but what about, what findings are you coming up with or they're sharing with you about the economic vitality as a result of this going through their communities? And obviously there's more sales going on, there's more tax revenue being generated. Have we seen or have you seen those kind of changes yet, even though it's pretty new?
We have, and I'm trying to get those substantiated in a different way than our folks. Our community outreach folks went, and I'm kind of telling you this, my plan was to tell my board this. In October, we're having a workshop where I'm giving them a lot of information. We've been surveying our people. Where are you coming from? Where are you going to? What time are you coming and going? Why are you taking the train? Are you sorry that you're taking? We're asking them a lot of questions, and we're trying to let our board know and our community. One of those is we surveyed everywhere there are within a mile, there are businesses. We ask our community outreach, get off and ask those, do you see a difference ever since Smart Train has come? And many of the businesses have seen substantial increase to their business, and they say it's directly because of the Smart Train. And the reason they say that is they can say when the train arrived and comes this group of people. But I'm trying to substantiate that beyond he said, she said, and see how we can put that together. So,
thank you.
Ms. Johnson, any questions? Mr. Caput.
Yeah, thank you for your report. I guess with everything, you've answered pretty much all the questions. They're pretty, they were good questions. With everything, there's a benefit and a burden. So the benefit, of course, is somehow relieving some of the traffic and everything off the roads. And then the burden, of course, is the cost and how much it's worth for the public to get involved. But, you know, it comes down to there's not one solution for all of the problems that we do have with traffic and people wanting to get somewhere. Even widening and adding lanes and everything to the freeway is only going to benefit so many people and so many, it takes so many, you know, some of that burden off. What you're talking about is, it looks similar in a way to BART, how BART works. And BART is, at the end of the year, even though a lot of people are using it, they're not in the black, they're in the red, right? So how much in the red is this system each year? If the fare is not paying for everything. How much does, percentage-wise, does the fare pay for the operation of what you're talking about, and how much extra that you actually need from the public?
So, by choice, my board wanted to make the fare very affordable. This is, if you were my board, that would be one of your decisions. Do you want to be affordable or not? And remember, our source of money, funding, comes from sales tax. So when people voted for 25 cents every time they spend $100 for 20 years, that's where I'm getting the money. The fare revenue is only 12-13%, which is like $4 million, and that's by design. Again, if you're operating a train agency and bicycle, you will have a steady source of income, wherever that is. It's not going to come from your fare box recovery. You know, very, very few transit agencies in the nation get above 60-70%. Public service, whether it's roads or local highway or bus or transit, in order for it to be affordable, must be subsidized, and they are, by your gas tax. Every day you pump, you're subsidizing the roads. Here, it's the sales tax. That's how we get our money.
And then again, the benefit and the burden on who it's benefiting and who the burden is on. In a lower income area, if somebody wants to actually commute and they can get a job, let's say $14 an hour in Santa Cruz, and they want to go from Watsonville, is it going to be affordable for them? And how much of the burden is when they're paying sales tax and everything like that when they're buying something? So what I'm getting at is I don't want to just see upper income people riding this beautiful train back and forth. What percentage would you say, has there been a study on how many are lower income that are actually using the service up in your area? And how many people that are using it are actually going back and forth maybe with jobs or shopping and people that have a lot of money?
You know, you're asking great questions. Some of them I haven't figured out how I'd be able to ask that question,
Yeah.
which is during a survey, say, so, you know, Mrs. Johnson, can you say how much is your income? It's like, no, I'm not going to tell you that. What I can observe for you is this. I don't see a lot of rich people using the train on a daily basis. This is our observation. I see folks who are going places, your school, your public works, your teachers, your policemen. The reason I know that is we give them special ID. And other workers, people who have the ability to use the train. Some people need their cars. Some people need to go where the train doesn't go. But those who can, I see these people who are, remember, most of our commuters are morning and afternoon, I'm sorry? Right. And so that's who we're seeing. The biggest debate my board had, which you will go through, is what will that price be, right? And that's what we did. We had a workshop, then we had conversations, and you adjust it. If your source of revenue is from a sales tax or another source, now you can, as policymakers, adjust your fare box recovery to what your community needs. Does that make sense? Because that is not your source of income. Your source of income is your sales tax, parcel tax, however you're going to do it. That's really what it is. In terms of benefits, I also want to remind us, what is the option of doing nothing? That's what we need to look at. What will happen to your employers who can get employees? The congestion gets to a point nobody wants to go. What will happen then? Then you start seeing stores close. And stores close, you see neighborhoods start changing character. Those are the kind of things, what is the cost of doing nothing? Those are very, very substantial to the health of your county and your cities. And those are the balancing act that these board members had to do. That's why they came out with a quarter-cent sales tax. And 70% said, go for it. And you know, they're not using the train. Many people, many of our cities, they're not anywhere near the train. I can tell you there are towns that they are 30, 40 miles away from the nearest train. They voted for it because they thought as a big picture it was the right thing to do. And I'm sure you have the same situation.
And my last question would be, it's actually related to doing nothing. We do have to do something, and so whether or not, you know, it's worth it. So transparency was brought up in one of the questions. I think it's real important people know what they're getting. It's not perfect. There's not one solution. You could widen the highway. That's not going to solve it. You could have rail and everything. That's not going to solve some of the problems we have. But it's the transparency and everything when you're actually talking to the public. How transparent were you, and how how many people, how many workshops did you have, how many neighborhood meetings did you have, and things like
If
that?
you don't mind, I have my chair answer it, because I was on the opposite side. I was at the county. We were not part of SMART, and they went through the hard part
I'm
of
like a
selling
lot of
it.
people, I don't mind paying for something, but I don't like the small print sometimes.
Well, when you said how many workshops and community meetings, I rolled my eyes because I can't even count. There were so many, I can't even count. And what we did in the second, I was involved with both the first and the second sales tax measures, was groups came together because they really wanted it to pass the second time. So what made it successful was getting a cross-section of the whole community of both counties to work together. So we had labor unions, environmental organizations working together for the first time with untrusted business organizations in the North Bay Labor Council. The environmentalists had never trusted them. They became co-chairs of the committee to start going out into the public. There were community meetings everywhere. There were neighborhood meetings. They all got together and coordinated a big, we couldn't run the campaign ourselves. They did precinct walking for months. There were meetings in every city council. I mean, I can't even count, hundreds. And so it was a big group effort the second time, and so we still continue all that, and the cities still get together and work. You know, our board is really similar to yours. We have two supervisors from each county, 3 city council members from each county, then and then 2 from the Golden Gate Bridge District. And so anyway, we all work together, and we're reaching out into our own areas, including Napa County, who has a seat, and Mendocino County, who have a seat, and the train doesn't go to either place. So they were all working together because it's like Farhad said, it's a big vision that really encompasses everybody. But I couldn't even count the number of meetings and that we did.
I'll just have a couple questions. I appreciate your remarks about reaching out and building a big coalition. We found here in Santa Cruz that when we actually all work together, we can accomplish a lot of our transportation goals and build the political support to be able to pass funding measures. I wonder if you could say something about quiet zones. In the past here in Santa Cruz, when there's been excursion service, there's been loud horns and been very disruptive to the community, and it still gets talked about every time. What do you do about that on SMART?
So federal regulations, FRA, requires a train to blow their horn quarter mile before they get to a crossing and continues through the crossing until they get to the other side. Local agencies, cities and counties, can go through a process whereby adding additional safety measures, meaning more gates, berm, and other things that FRA and California Public Utilities Commission in a field meeting with you will dictate. By adding those features at your grade crossings, then the train will be required not to blow their horn, with an exception of emergencies. In Marin County, we have entire county's quiet zone. In Sonoma County, almost 80% of the county is quiet zone. The parts that are not was really a bureaucratic mess that whoever did the paperwork and the application left this one out, and we're now cleaning up. And so for us, we have quiet zone. You need to address that during your early design stage, and you need to reach an agreement with your jurisdictions about liability and about the cost. In our case, we spend $10 million of SMART money to make all of our 63 grade crossings quiet zone ready. I took a policy to my board and said, you either can wait till we go operational, have everybody scream at us then, and go back and reconstruct, or we can assume they're going to scream, and let's assume they're going to ask for quiet zone sometime in the future, and therefore let's do it at the beginning, get it over with. Their direction to me was get it over with, and that's what we built. So those are some of those items that during your preliminary you need to address.
One of the other, I thank you for the answer. One of the other questions that often gets raised here as we think about a trail next to the rail line is safety and aesthetics. That we're going to have some ugly fencing or, some kind of fencing that'll ruin our coastal communities. And there's a question of who would want to ride next to when a train's coming by. How do you separate the train and the trail, and do you have bike riders on the trail that you have?
Yes, we have tremendous amount of bike riders. We separate them where we have room, as much as 15 feet. The reason we put a fence is to prevent people who are not a biker or a train and simply want to trespass, and also children. So the fence is a security fence. If you put the right fence and the right color, you won't even see it a week later because it blends in. If you're, federal regulations and your own safety regulation, you don't want, remember, when you're building a bike path, you're not building it for this professional person who knows what they're doing. That bike path also can have Johnny, the 7-year-old, who's in his first week of bike and is using that. So you have to have safety measures, and that distance is what we use. So when we have 15 feet, when we don't, as many feet as we can. But we separate them by a fence for safety reasons, of both.
And I think I saw some pictures in your presentation that they're like 42 inches high or something.
Correct.
And they did seem to blend in, at least when I was looking at them. You've now been at this for a while. We've been talking about it for a number of years. What do you see about the funding? Do you see changes in funding that have taken place at the state level or the federal level?
When we started, state had no money to give us. They had the traditional STIP that you all go through, and it's so little, and by the time you divide it between your cities and county, you as an MPO get $10 to figure out what to do. Thanks to SB1, state now, frankly, has more money than federal government. Right now, we're not doing well with the federal government. We're the wrong state and the wrong Bay Area and all the wrong projects. Although I have to kiss up to Washington, D.C., because we got $21 million, so I am officially kissing up. But the fact is, state of California right now has tremendous amount of money, and they are very good at distributing it. The current Secretary of Transportation, I'm sure Kelly knows this, but he's just on the Caltrans side, but on the rail side and everything else side, they're really stepping up and helping you. They won't step up and help you when you're fighting. They will step up and help you when you have a plan and commitment to do something. And more united front, the more opportunity. I brought the secretary, he came with his entire entourage, and they looked at our operation facility, and he said, how long did it take you from beginning to end? And I said 48 months. And they said, that's the kind of project we want to put money in. So the future is bright. Now there is a gas tax repeal, as you know, that it's going on. I think Californians are much smarter than falling for that, because for the first time we now have $5 billion a year that our Secretary of Transportation can spend on us, on our infrastructure. And the money is protected. In June we passed Proposition 69, correct?
Yeah.
Which protects that money and cannot go anywhere else. So state and federal, through your congressional, your senator, assembly member, start getting them involved, and you'll see they tell you, fine, show us a united front. That has been the success story for us.
The last question I'll ask is, you have very impressive numbers for your first year of operation. How has the fires affected that ridership?
Huge, huge. We lost 6,000 homes, and they were the type of homes that were the type of riders that we were carrying. They were the school teachers and the firefighters and the government employees. There were no high-end homes. There were some, but... and our ridership was going steadily up when we opened from August. October 10th, big dive, 2 weeks. The whole county was burning. Some of our stations we couldn't operate because there were no water or PG&E, which my board declared free service during that time, and we were just moving people. And it has now bounced back, and it has gone beyond when we started. So I think the 600,000, we took a big jolt. I don't want to jinx it, but I think next year it'll be much higher. Okay. And as we're adding more service, and as we go to Larkspur.
And those houses get rebuilt.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I think Mr. Rockin had a follow-up question. I just want to thank you for your comments.
So this is a quick question, but you mentioned that I understand that fare recovery is not the way you run a system, any public transport, in fact, even private transportation system. But you say you have 12 to 13% is your recovery rate. The transit district board that I serve on, we get in most transit districts around the country between 19 and 24%. Have you found problems with funders? I mean, they want local support in order to match what they're doing. But have you had people tell you you should have a higher percentage of recovery? And there's that choice the board made about what you wanted the fares to be. Is that in any way limited by a concern that if you have too low a recovery rate, agencies are going to tell you, we won't give you any money because the riders themselves just don't pay enough?
You know, excellent question. The way we looked at it is we're a brand new service. We're like a brand new business. You open your doors, and if you're serving a $100 lunch, who's going to come? My board wanted to make sure that people come and try us and then feel like, yeah, I can do this. So that was number one. Number two, we have a lot of people who are workers who are going long distances, and when you do zone, we didn't want them to pay $20, $30 round trip. It just, you know, the board, you know, they're all local. They have their feeling on what is happening. So it was my task to deal with those agencies, and I continue having those arguments. So I think for next 10 years, I'm going to say we're brand new, so we're still trying to figure out, because we want to keep, frankly, my board wants to keep the rates low because we're already getting paid sales tax.
You know what
So they're already paying that. Now, you know, if you ask me, I think they should be free.
Do you know what the what the recovery rate for rail is versus what it is for buses, by any chance? I have no idea.
No. The reason is, you know, we're brand new. Every 10, 15 years, there is a new rail agency created in America. So we're very unique. The big agencies, they're in the 60, 70, but they're in their 40-year and 50-year. You look at BART. BART has been doing this for 40 years, and they're still figuring out, do I have a parking or not? You see what I mean? So it's an evolving. For us, one of the items, my board will have that discussion because they told me, come back after a year and look at what we charge and what others charge. And my guess is they're going to continue with their philosophy of we want to make the train something that our teachers can afford.
Thanks again, really.
That's my guess.
I'm going to ask the commissioners to hold any additional questions so we can actually get to the public to hear some comments from them.
I had a question, though. Can we defer that? And you know, it's almost 20 to 12, and we have another presentation, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Mr. Mansourian and Ms. Fudge have to leave. Yeah, so
I'll be happy to stay since, what is it, $1 million speaking fee today? Yes, so for another $1 million, so it'd be $2 million. That's where it goes to the fare box recovery, just so you know. I'll be happy to stay.
So when Mr. Dondero and I talked about this, we were trying to figure out whether we should have both presentations and do one series of comments, as you're suggesting. And we were trying to figure out how to balance so we didn't confuse all the questions, because we're not going to have people come up and ask a question and have Mr. Mansourian answer it. You know, we're going to try to take them all.
Yeah, but we're an hour and 45 minutes into his presentation. It doesn't really, it leaves about 20 minutes for the next presentation. Do you want to expedite the?
Get a sense. What? Yeah, how many people want to ask questions or make comments?
Raise them really high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So how many people?
10 people at the most.
We're gonna do 10 people. We're gonna give you a minute to ask questions or make a comment, but please come forward. And if you could line up, that would also be helpful.
It actually was 7 I counted, but I assume there's 10.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
Stanley Sokolow again. I just have a quick observation, back of the envelope kind of calculation for Mr. Caput. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but the IRS has a figure how much you can deduct for trips you take in your car, you know, for medical trips or whatever, which last time I looked at it was a little over 50 cents a mile. So if you do a quick calculation, 20 miles commute from Watsonville to Santa Cruz, 50 cents a mile.
54 cents.
It's 54 now. Okay, let's just say 50. So that's about $10 a trip. Make it a round trip, it's $20 a day, 5 days a week, it's $100 a week. So for a month, there are 4.3 weeks in a month. So that's $430 a month for operating your car to commute during work. The Smart monthly pass was only $200. So it's way cheaper. So for the low-income people, they're better off, even though it sounds like it's an expensive fare.
Nancy Pilasich, Watsonville City Council. I just want to say this gives me hope. I was so ecstatic to hear this. I didn't know if I was going to be able to make it here. I'm glad I did, and I think they've done an excellent job, and we have hope for the future. This is a great plan, and it's something we can implement here. We'll have to figure it out, but we can do it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just want to recognize that there have been 5 council members here, at least that I've counted. So that's very impressive that Watsonville cares so much about this. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Greg Becker from south of La Selva. Thank you, Mr. Mansourian, for coming down. My question to you is, how have you reacted to the LPG tank cars adjacent to your tracks, and if SB 1029 will mitigate that? Thank you.
Manu Koenig, City of Santa Cruz. I guess we'll just direct questions to you, and maybe they'll make it back to Mr. Mansourian at some point.
That's the plan, I think.
Yeah. All right, then. I've got 6 questions here. The first, is there any way you could do this without passing the quarter-cent sales tax? Would the state give you funds without that sales tax from SB 1? 2, what is the cost of a single train set? I believe it's around $7 million for a 2-car train set. I was based on some numbers on Wikipedia. But so the cost of a single train set and then the capacity of that train set. Commissioner Rockin was good to point out the cost of an electric bus, so I'd like to know the comparable for the train set. 3, what is the max capacity of the entire system? We hear that there's great demand for increased capacity, later hours. Given that it's a single track with 4, was that all me?
Yeah, we're only given a minute.
Oh, got it. And could you do this with 30% of the population? Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning. Steve Trujillo, candidate for Nancy's seat, actually, running for City Council. The important part of all this is if you want to get newcomers, new customers, new clients, you have to keep the price down. Remember, survey came out, KSBW just mentioned, Santa Cruz, second greatest county, the second worst county for poverty in California, after LA County. We also have to recognize that no, most people in Watsonville aren't rich. Marin County has a lot more money than we do. Nonetheless, we need to pass the quarter-cent sales tax, and we need to do something similar to this because widening Highway 1 is not an option. And we need both rail and trail to start the Watsonville Renaissance.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Mark Mesiti-Miller from Santa Cruz. I just have a few quick questions for Farhad. What is the average length, miles traveled, a rider travels on SMART? Number two, have you met or exceeded your goals for ridership and for revenue? You've painted a pretty rosy picture. What are the three biggest, most common complaints SMART receives? And, are there other ways to fund train systems than sales taxes? Thank you.
Robert Stevens, Aptos, and I wanted to say I've thoroughly enjoyed hearing about SMART. I'm a big supporter of trains, but I think you have to use the right tool and the right application, and I'm not sure our county population warrants this. And the one question I have is, I believe your ridership per train is about 88 people if you divide 3,000 by 34, and I just want to verify that that's correct, about 88 people per train.
I just would like to go back to the thing that we opened with. I think it's appropriate that this series began with Jarrett Walker, who put that lens on this about freedom and opportunity. And my question is, we did hear about the SMART train being comfortable for those who can afford to ride it. Certainly if you can afford a cup of coffee, a beer, a glass of wine, it's lovely. I've been on it. It's a great ride. But it's helping a very small portion of the population. I'd like to know what the demographics of that population is beyond kind of the hypothetical stories we heard this morning, and I don't know that those answers are here today. But I would like to know how this train in Santa Cruz County would create new freedom and opportunity for the people who need it most. Because quite honestly, it doesn't sound like it would. And while a big infrastructure project is something that a public agency really likes, and while building a train may employ people for a certain amount of time, if it's not a long-term solution, it's really not where we should be thinking.
Thank you.
Michael St. Aptos, a quick question that came up last night. Which way do you think was best? You guys have taken on the whole operation of this as basically an RTC type situation. Or is it better the way we're doing it, bringing in an operator as Progressive Rail? Thank you.
Just another question. If you were a kid working at the boardwalk and you lived in Watsonville, would you rather pay $2 to get on the metro to get up to work, or would you rather pay $23 or whatever number that they're talking about?
Good morning again, Lowell Hurst, Mayor of Watsonville. I was one of the lucky people that got to ride the SMART train, and I'm not saying it's going to work here or not going to work here, but one of the things that was remarkable to me was that I visited with grandmothers and senior citizens on the train, and they unanimously said, I couldn't go see my grandkids if it wasn't for this train. I wouldn't be able to see my relatives because I can't afford to live close to the city. And I also sat next to a developmentally disabled adult on the train who had a job, but lived in a group home, and he said he would not be able, as a handicapped individual, he would not be able to hold a job or visit his friends or even have a social life if it wasn't for the SMART train. And so those are just two practical applications that I saw personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hernandez, I think you're going to be the last speaker on this.
We only have 1 minute. I prepared 7 minutes of, just kidding.
The person sitting next to you will appreciate the other 6.
Every time I talk to folks here in Watsonville, they tell me that they work in Santa Cruz and different areas in Capitola, a lot of young people. It was mentioned before about Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. I got 2 nieces that actually work there from different sides of the family that actually work there, and I just sold one of them my old car so that they can get to work from Watsonville to the boardwalk. It's one more car that's going to be added on the freeway. I've talked to different workers from different places like Santa Cruz Nutritionals. They say about 60% of their workforce is from Watsonville, women that worked in the canneries here before in Districts 1 and 2. People that work in the county buildings, both Ocean Street, Emmeline, a lot of employees here in Watsonville from UC Santa Cruz. You see about 20 vans, Dominican Hospital, and not to mention every single restaurant that's in Santa Cruz. The majority of the people that work as busboys, dishwashers, line cooks are predominantly from Watsonville, and every hotel as well.
Thank
not
you.
to mention 2,000 cars less greenhouse gas.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry to cut you off. I appreciate the comments. We want to move on to our next presentation. I want to also just thank Mayor Fudge for being here. I appreciate someone with local knowledge and the leadership skills that you've clearly shown in Windsor. Have been a strong advocate for this, and hearing your perspective even briefly here is helpful. You and I have had a chance to talk before. And enjoy the rest of your stay here in Santa Cruz.
John, could we ask that the questions, since we'll have them on tape, could we have them answered possibly on our website so the people who asked those questions, I mean, there were a couple of very concrete and specific questions as opposed to comments.
We'll figure out at the end of the meeting how we're going to answer the questions.
Okay.
All right, if that works out. We do have a second presentation today, which is from the city manager of Kirkland, Washington, Kirk Triplett, Mr. Dondero.
Yes, I'll keep this very brief. Mr.